Chapter 6. Court attention at all cost. Everything is judged by its appearance. What is unseen counts for nothing. Never let yourself get lost in the crowd, then buried in oblivion. Stand out. Be conspicuous at all times. Make yourself a magnet of attention by appearing larger, more colorful, more mysterious than the bland and timid masses. Surround yourself and your name with the sensational and scandalous. Draw attention to yourself by creating an unforgettable and even controversial image. Court scandal. Do anything to make yourself seem larger than life and shine more brightly than those around you. Make no distinction between kinds of attention. Notoriety of any sort will bring you power. Better to be slandered and attacked than ignored. Observation of the law. P.T. Barnum, America's premier 19th century showman, started his career as an assistant to the owner of a circus, Aaron Turner. In 1836, the circus stopped in Annapolis, Maryland, for a series of performances. On the morning of opening day, Barnum took a stroll through town, wearing a new black suit. People started to follow him. Someone in the gathering crowd shouted out that he was a Reverend Ephraim K. Avery, infamous as a man acquitted of the charge of murder, but still believed guilty by most Americans. The angry mob tore off Barnum's suit and was ready to lynch him. After desperate appeals, Barnum finally convinced them to follow him to the circus, where he could verify his identity. Once there, old Turner confirmed that this wasn't all a practical joke. He himself had spread the rumors that Barnum was Avery. The crowd dispersed, but Barnum, who'd nearly been killed, was not amused. He wanted to know what could have induced his boss to play such a trick. "My dear Mr. Barnum," Turner replied, "it was all for our good. Remember, all we need to ensure success is notoriety." And indeed, everyone in town was talking about the joke, and the circus was packed that night, and every night it stayed in Annapolis. Barnum had learned a lesson he would never forget. Barnum's first big venture of his own was the American Museum, a collection of curiosities located in New York. One day, a beggar approached Barnum in the street. Instead of giving him money, Barnum decided to employ him. Taking him back to the museum, he gave the man 5 bricks and told him to make a slow circuit of several blocks. At certain points, he was to lay down a brick on the sidewalk, always keeping one brick in hand. On the return journey, he was to replace each brick on the street with the one he held. Meanwhile, he was to remain serious of countenance and to answer no questions. Once back at the museum, he was to enter, walk around out inside, then leave through the back door and make the same bricklaying circuit again. On the man's first walk through the streets, several hundred people swarmed around him, debating what he was doing. Every time he entered the museum, he was followed by the people who bought tickets to keep watching him. Many of them was distracted by the museum's collections and stayed inside. By the end of the day, the brick man had drawn over 1,000 people in the museum. A few days later, the police ordered him to cease and desist from his walks. The crowds were blocking traffic. The bricklaying stopped, but thousands of New Yorkers had entered the museum. Many of those had because P.T. Barnum coverts. Barnum would put a band of musicians on a balcony overlooking the street. Beneath a huge banner proclaiming free music for the millions. What generosity, New Yorkers thought, and they flocked to hear the free concerts. But Barnum took pains to hire the worst musicians he could find, and soon after the band struck up, people would hurry to buy tickets to the museum, where they would be out of earshot of the band's noise of booing of the crowd. One of the first oddities Barnum toured around the country was Joyce Heath, a woman he claimed was 161 years old and whom he advertised as a slave who had once been George Washington's nurse. After several months, the crowds began to dwindle. So Barnum sent an anonymous letter to the papers claiming that Heath was a clever fraud. Joyce Heath, he wrote, is not a human being, but an automation made of whalebone, Indian rubber, and a numberless springs. Those who had not bothered to see her before were immediately curious, and those who had already seen her paid to see her again, to find out whether the rumor was she was a robot was true. In 1842, Barnum purchased the carcass of what was purported to be a mermaid. This creature resembled a monkey with the body of a fish, but the head and body were perfectly joined. It was truly a wonder. After some research, Barnum discovered that the creature had been expertly put together in Japan, where the hoax had caused quite a stir. He nevertheless planted articles in the newspaper around the country claiming the capture of a mermaid in the Fiji Islands. He also sent the papers woodcut prints of paintings showing mermaids. By the time he showed the specimen in his museum, a national debate had been sparked over the existence of these mythical creatures. A few months before Barnum's campaign, no one had cared or even known about mermaids. Now everyone was talking about them as if they were real. Crowds flocked in record numbers to see Fiji mermaid and to hear debates on the subject. A few years later, Barnum toured Europe with General Tom Thumb, a 5-year dwarf from Connecticut who Barnum claimed was an 11-year-old English boy, whom he trained to do many remarkable acts. During this tour, Barnum's name attracted such attention that Queen Victoria, that paragon of sobriety, requested a private audience with him and his talented dwarf at the Buckingham Palace. The English press may have ridiculed Barnum, but Victoria was royally entertained by him and respected him ever after. Interpretation. Barnum understood the fundamental truth about attracting attention. Once people's eyes are on you, you have a special legacy. For Barnum created interest meant creating a crowd, as he later wrote. Every crowd has a silver lining. And crowds tend to act in conjunction. And if one person stops to see your beggar man laying bricks in the streets, more will do the same. They will gather like dust bunnies. Then, given a gentle punt, they will enter your museum or watch your show. To create a crowd, you have to do something different and odd. Any kind of curiosity will serve the purpose. For crowds are magnetically attracted by unusual and explicable. And once you have their attention, never let it go. If it veers toward other people, it does so at your expense. Barnum would ruthlessly suck attention from his competitors, knowing what a valuable commodity it is. At the beginning of your rise to the top, then, spread all your energy on attracting attention. Most important, the quality of the attention is irrelevant. No matter how badly his shows were reviewed or how slanderously personal were the attacks on his hoax, Barnum would never complain. If a newspaper critic reviled his particularly badly, in fact, he made sure to invite the man to an opening and give him the best seat in the house. He would even write anonymous attacks on his own works just to keep his name in the paper. From Barnum's vantage, attention, whether negative or positive, was the main ingredient of his success. The worst fate in the world for a man yearns fame, glory, and of course power to be ignored. If the courtier happens to engage in arms in some public spectacle, such as jousting, he will ensure that the horse he has is beautifully caparisoned, that he himself is suitably attired with appropriate mottos and ingenious devices to attract the eyes of onlookers in his direction, as surely as the lodestone attracts iron. Baldassar Castiglione, 1478 to 1529. Keys to power. Burning more brightly than those around you is a skill that no one is born with. You have to learn to attract attention as surely as to lodestone attracts iron. At the start of your career, you must attach your name and your reputation to quality and image that sets you apart from other people. This image can be something like characteristic style of dress or a personality quirk that amuses people and gets talked about. Once the image is established, you have an appearance, a place in the sky for your star. It is a common mistake to imagine that this peculiar appearance of yours should not be controversial. That to be attacked is somehow bad. Nothing could be further from the truth. To avoid being a flash in the pan, and having your notoriety eclipsed by another, you must demonstrate between different types of attention. In the end, every kind of attention will work in your favor. Barnum, we have seen, welcomed personal attacks and felt no need to defend himself. He deliberately courted the image of being a humbug. The court of Louis XIV contained many talented writers, artists, and great beauties, and men and women of impeccable virtue. But no one was talked about than the singular Dote Lazon. The Duke The Duke was short, almost dwarfish, and he was prone to the most insolent kinds of behavior. He slept with the king's mistress and openly insulted not only other courtiers, but the king himself. Louis, however, was so beguiled by the Duke's eccentricities that he could not bear his absence from the court. It was simple. The strangeness of the Duke's character attracted attention. Once people were enthralled by him, they wanted him around at any cost. Society craves larger than life figures, people who stand above the general mediocrity. Never be afraid, then, of the qualities that set you apart and draw attention to you. Court controversy, even scandal. It is better to be attacked, even slandered, than ignored. All professions are ruled by the law, and all professions must be a bit of a showman about himself. The great scientist Thomas Edison knew that to raise money, he had to remain in the public eye at all costs, almost as important as inventions. Themselves was how he presented them to the public and courted attention. Edison would design visually dazzling experiments to display his discoveries with electricity. He would talk of future inventions that seemed fantastic at the time, robots and machines that could photograph thought, and that he had no intention of wasting energy on, but that made the public talk about him. He did everything he could to make sure that he received more attention than his great rival, Nikola Tesla, who may have actually have been more brilliant than he was, but whose name was far less known. In 1915, it was rumored Edison and Tesla would be joint recipients of the year's Nobel Peace Prize in Physics. The prize was eventually given to a pair of English physicists. Only later it was discovered that the prize committee had actually approached Edison, but he had turned them down, refusing to share the prize with Tesla. By the time his fame was more secure than Tesla's, and he thought it better to refuse the honor to allow his rival the attention that would have come from sharing the prize. If you find yourself in a lowly position that offers little opportunity for you to draw attention, an effective trick is to attack the most visible, most famous, most powerful person you can find. When Pierre Artino, a young Roman servant boy of the early 16th century, wanted to get attention as a writer of verses, he decided to publish a series of satire poems ridiculing the Pope and his affection for a pet elephant. The attack put Artino in the public eye immediately. A slanderous attack on a person is a position of power would have a similar effect. Remember, however, to use such tactics sparingly after you have the public's attention when the act can wear thin. Once in the limelight, you must constantly renew it by adapting and varying your methods of courting attention. If you don't, the public will grow tired, will take you for granted, and move on to a newer star. The game requires constant vigilance, creativity. Pablo Picasso never allowed himself to fade into the background. If his name became too attached to a particular style, he would deliberately upset the public with a new series of paintings that went against all expectations. Better to create something ugly and disturbing, he believed, than to let viewers grow too familiar with his work. Understand, people feel superior to the person whose actions they can predict. If you show them who is in control by playing against their expectations, you both gain their respect and tighten your hold on their fleeting attention. Image. The limelight, the actor who steps into the brilliant light attains a heightened presence. All eyes are on him. There is room for only one actor at a time in the limelight. Narrows being. Do whatever it takes to make yourself its focus. Make your gestures so large, amusing, and scandalous that the light stays on you while other actors are left in the shadows. Authority. Be ostentatious and be seen. What is not seen is as though it did not exist. It was light that first caused all creation to shine forth. Display fills up many blanks, covers up deficiencies, and gives everything a second life, especially when it's backed by genuine merit. Barnum, Garcia, 1601 to 1658. Create an air of mystery. In a world growing increasingly banal and familiar, what seems enigmatic instantly draws attention. Never make it too clear what you are doing or about to do. Do not show all your cards. An air of mystery heightens your presence. It also creates anticipation. Everyone will be watching you to see what happens next. Use mystery to beguile, seduce, and even frighten. Observation of the law. Beginning in 1905, rumors started to spread throughout Paris of a young Oriental girl who danced in a private home wrapped in veils that she gradually discarded. A local journalist had been seeing her dancing, reported that a woman from the Far East had come to Europe laden with perfume and jewels to introduce some of her riches of the Orient, color, and life into the saturated society of Europe's cities. Soon, everyone knew the dancer's name, Mate Hari. Early that year in the winter, small and select audiences would gather in a salon filled with Indian statues and other relics, which an orchestra played music inspired by Hindu and Javanese melodies. After keeping the audience waiting and wondering, Mata Hari would suddenly appear in a startling costume, a white cotton brassiere covered with Indian-type jewels. Jewel bands at the waist supporting a sarong that revealed as it is concealed, bracelets up the arm. Then Mata Hari would dance in a style no one in France had seen before. her whole body swaying as if it were in a trance. She told her excited and curious audience that her dances told stories from India, Indian mythology, and Japanese folktale. Soon, the cream of Paris and ambassadors from far off lands were competing for invitations to the saloon, where it was rumored that Mate was actually performing sacred dances in the nude. The public wanted to know more about her. She told journalists that she was actually Dutch in origin, but she had grown up in the island of Java. She would also talk about time spent in India, how she had learned sacred Hindu dances there, and how Indian women can shoot straight, ride horseback, and are capable of doing logarithms and talk psychology. By the summer of 1905, although a few Parisians had actually seen Mata Hari dance, her name was on everyone's lips. As Mata Hari gave more interviews, the story of her origin kept changing. She had grown up in India. Her grandmother was a daughter of a Japanese princess. She had lived on the island of Sumatra, where she had spent her time horseback riding, gun in hand, and risked her life. No one knew anything certain about her, but journalists did not mind these changes in her biography. They compared her to an Indian goddess, a creature from the pages of Baudelaire, wherever their imagination wanted to see in this mysterious woman from the East. In August of 1905, Mata Hari performed for the first time in public. Crowds thronged to see her on opening night, caused a riot. She had now become a cult figure, spawning many imitations. One reviewer wrote, Mata Hari's personality personifies all the poetry of India, its mysticism, its voluptuous, and its hypnotic charm. Another noted, if India possesses such unexpected treasures, then all Frenchmen would immigrate to the shores of the Ganges. Soon, the fame of Mata and her sacred Indian dances spread beyond Paris. She was invited to Berlin, Vienna, Milan. Over the next few years, she performed throughout Europe, mixed with the highest social circles and earned an income that gave her an independence rarely enjoyed by women of the period. Then near the end of World War I, she was arrested in France, tried, convicted, and finally executed as a German spy. Only during the trial did the truth come out. Mata Hari was not from Java or India, had not grown up in the Orient, did not have a drop of Eastern blood in her body. Her real name was Marguerite Zell, and she came from the stolid northern province of Friesland, Holland. Interpretation. When Margaret arrived in Paris in 1904, she had half a franc in her pocket. She was one of thousands of beautiful young girls who flocked to Paris every year, taking work as artists, models, nightclubs, dancers, vaudeville performers at the Folies Bergère. After a few years, they would inevitably be replaced by younger girls and would often end up in the streets, turning to prostitution, or else returning to the town they came from, older and chastened. Zell had higher ambitions. She had no dance experience and had never performed in a theater. But as a young girl, she had traveled with her family and witnessed local dancers in Java and Sumatra. Zell clearly understood that there was important in the act, not the dance itself, even her face or figure, but her ability to create an air of mystery about herself. The mystery she created lay not just in her dance and her costumes or the stories she would tell, or her endless lies about her origins. It lay in the atmosphere enveloping everything she did. There was nothing you could say for sure about her. She was also changing, always surprising her audience with new costumes, new dances, new stories. This air of mystery left the public always wanting to know more, always wondering about her next move. Mata Hari was no more beautiful than many of the dancers. What separated her from the mass was attracted and held the public's attention, made her famous and wealthy was her mystery. People were enthralled by mystery because it invites constant interpretation. They never tire of it. The mysterious cannot be grasped, and what cannot be seized, consumed, creates power. Key to power. In the past, the world was filled with terrifying and unknowable diseases, disaster, capricious depot, the mystery, death itself. What we could not understand, we reimagine as myths and spirits. Over the centuries, though, we have managed, through science and reason, to eliminate the darkness. What was mysterious and forbidden has grown familiar and comfortable. Yet, this light has a price in the world that is evermore Barnum, that has its mystery and myths squeezed out of it. We secretly crave nemas, people or things that cannot be instantly interpreted, seized, or consumed. That is the power of mysteries. It invites layers of interpretation, excites our imagination, seduces us into believing that it conceals something marvelous. The world has become so familiar and its inhabitants so predictable that what wraps itself in mystery will almost always draw limelight to it and make us watch it. Do not imagine that to create an air of mystery, you have to be grand and awe-inspiring. Mystery that is woven into your day-to-day demeanor is subtle, has that much more power to fascinate and attract attention. Remember, most people are upfront, can be read like an open book, take little care to control their words or image, and are hopelessly predictable. By simply holding back, keeping silent, occasionally uttering ambiguous phrases, deliberately appearing inconsistent, and acting odd in subtlest ways, you will emanate an aura of mystery. The people around you will then magnify that aura by constantly trying to interpret you. Both artists and con artists understand the vital link between being mysterious and attracting interest. Count Victor Lustig, the aristocrat of swindlers, played the game to the perfection. He could show up at the best hotels in a limo driven by a Japanese chauffeur. No one had ever seen a Japanese chauffeur before, so this seemed exotic and strange. Lustig would dress in the most expensive clothes, but always with something, a medal, a flower, or armband, out of place, at least in conventional terms. This was not seen as tasteless, but as odd and intriguing. In hotels, he would be seen receiving telegrams at all hours, one after the other, brought to him by his Japanese chauffeur. Telegrams he would tear up with the utter nonchalance. In fact, they were fakes, completely blank. He would sit alone in the dining room, reading a large, impressive-looking book, smiling at people, yet remaining aloof. Within a few days, of course, the entire hotel would be abuzz with interest in this strange man. All this attention allowed Lustig to lure suckers with ease. They would beg him for his confidence and his company. Everyone wanted to be seen with this mysterious aristocrat. In the presence of this distracting enigma, they wouldn't even notice they were being robbed blind. An air of mystery can make the mediocre appear intelligent, profound. It made Mata Hari, a woman of average appearance and intelligence, seem like a goddess. And her dancing, divinely inspired an air of mystery about an artist makes his or her artwork immediately more intriguing. A trick Marcel Duchamp played to great effect. It is all very easy to do. Say little about your work, tease and titillate with alluring, even contradictory comments, then stand back and let others try to make sense of it all. Mysterious people put others in a kind of inferior position, that of trying to figure them out. To digress, they can control. They also elicit the fear of surrounding anything uncertain and unknown. All great leaders know that an aura of mystery draws attention to them and creates an intimidating presence. Mao Tse-tung, for example, cleverly cultivated an enigmatic image. He had no worries about being seen. He had no worries about seeming inconsistent or contradicting himself. The very contradictionness of his actions and words meant that he always had the upper hand. No one, not even his own wife, ever felt they understood him, and he therefore seemed larger than life. This also meant that the public paid constant attention to him, ever anxious to witness his next move. If your social position prevents you from completely wrapping your actions in mystery, you must at least learn to make yourself less obvious. Everyone now and then act in a way that does not match with other people's perception of you. This way you keep those around you on defense, eliciting the kind of attention that makes you powerful. Done right, the creation of enigma can also draw the attention that strikes terror in your enemy. During the Second Punic War in 219 to 202 BC, the great Carthaginian General Hannibal was wreaking havoc in his march on Rome. Hannibal was known for his cleverness and duplicity. Under his leadership, Carthage's army, though smaller than those of the Romans, had constantly outmaneuvered them. On one occasion, though, Hannibal's scouts made a horrible blunder, leading his troops into a marshy terrain with the sea at their back. The Roman army blocked the mountain passes that led inland, and his general Fabius was ecstatic. At least he had Hannibal trapped. Posting his best sentries on the passes, he worked on a plan to destroy Hannibal's forces. But in the middle of the night, the sentries locked down to see a mysterious sight. A huge procession of lights was heading up the mountain. Thousands and thousands of lights. If this was Hannibal's army, it had suddenly grew 100-fold. The sentries agreed, heated about this could mean. Reinforcements from the sea. Troops that had been hidden in the area, ghosts. No explanation made. As they watched, fires broke out all over the mountain, and a horrible noise drifted up them from below, like a blowing of millions of horns. Demons, they thought. The sentries, the bravest and the most sensible in the Roman army, fled their posts in a panic. By the day, Hannibal had escaped from the marshland. What was his trick? He had really conjured up demons. Actually, had he really conjured up demons? Actually, he had done was order bundles of twigs fastened to horns of thousands of oxen and traveled his troop as beasts of burden. The twigs were then lit, giving the impression of torches of a vast army heading up the mountain. When the flames burned down the oxen's skin, they stampede in all directions, bellowing like mad and setting fires all over the mountainside. The key to this device's success was not the torches, the fires, or the noises in themselves, however, but the fact that Hannibal had created a puzzle that captivated the sentries' attention and gradually terrified them. From the mountaintop, there was no way to explain this bizarre sight. If the sentries could have explained it, they would have stayed at their post. If you can find yourself trapped, cornered, on the defense in some situation, try a simple experiment. Do something that cannot be easily explained or interpreted. Choose a simple action, but carry it out in a way that unsettles your opponent. A way with many possible interpretations, making your intentions obscure. Do not just be unpredictable, although this tactic, too, can be successful. See Law 17. Like Hannibal, create a scene that cannot be read. There will seem to be no method to your madness. No rhythm or reason, no rhyme or reason, no single explanation. If you do this right, you will inspire fear, and tremblings of the sentries will abandon their posts. Call it foreign madness of Hamlet tactic. For Hamlet uses it to great effect to play. Okay. For Hamlet uses it to great effect in Shakespeare's play, frightening his stepfather Claudius through the mystery of his behavior. The mysterious makes your forces seem larger, your power more terrifying. The dance of veils. The veils envelop the dancer. What they reveal causes excitement. What they conceal heightens interest. The essence of mystery. Authority. If you do not declare yourself immediately, you arouse expectation. Mix a little mystery with everything, and the very mystery stirs up veneration. And when you explain, be not too explicit. In this manner, you imitate the divine way when you cause men to wonder and watch. Ballstar. In the beginning of your rise to the top, you must attract attention at all costs. But as you rise higher, you must constantly adapt. Never wear the public out with the same tactic. An air of mystery works wonders for those who need to develop an aura of power and get themselves noticed. But it must seem measured and under control. Mate Hari went too far with her fabrications. Although the accusation that she was a spy was false, at the time, it was a reasonable presumption because all her lies made her seem suspicious and nefarious. Do not let your air of mystery be slowly transformed into a reputation for deceit. The mystery you create must be seen a game, playful, unthreatening. Recognize when it goes too far and pull back. There are times when the need for attention must be deferred, and when scandal and notoriety are the largest things you want to create. The attention you attract must never offend or challenge the reputation of those above you, not at any rate if they are secure. You will seem not only paltry, but desperate by comparison. There is an art to knowing when to draw notice and when to withdraw. Lola Montez was one of the greatest practitioners of the art of attracting attention. She managed to rise from the middle-class Irish background to being lover of France Liszt, and then a mystery of a politician advisor of King Ludwig of Bavaria. In her last years, though, she lost her sense of proportion. In London in 1850, there was to be a performance of the Shakespeare's Macbeth featuring the greatest actor of all times, Charles John King. Everyone of consequence in England society was to be there. It was rumored that even Queen Victoria and Prince Albert were to make a public appearance. The custom of the period demanded that everyone be seated before the Queen arrived. So the audience got there a little early. When the Queen entered her royal box, they observed the convention of standing up and applauding her. The royal couple waited, then bowed. Everyone sat down, and the lights were dim. Then suddenly all eyes turned to a box opposite Queen Victoria. A woman appeared from the shadows, taking her seat later than the Queen. It was Lola Montez. She wore a diamond tiara on her dark hair and a long fur coat over her shoulders. People whispered in amazement as the ermine cloak was draped to reveal low-neck gown of crimson velvet. But by turning the hair heads, the audience could see that the royal couple deliberately avoided looking at Lola's box. They followed Victoria's example, and for the rest of the evening, Lola Montez was ignored. After that evening, no one in fashionable society dared to be seen with her. All her magnetic powers were reversed. People would flee her sight. Her future in England was finished. Never appear overly greedy for attention, then for a signal insecurity. And insecurity drives power away. Understand that there are times when it's not in your interest to be in the center of attention. When in the presence of a king or queen, for instance, or equivalent thereof, bow and retreat to the shadows, never compete.